Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And I see that we have a lot of our participants coming and joining us today. Thank you once again for your participation. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Hola, bonjour, and guten Tag. 안녕하세요. And we have a lot of our participants joining us from all over the world, but thank you once again. My name is Ju-Yeon Cho, and I have been given the honor of being your MC for today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again. It's currently 4 p.m. here in Korea. I believe that in Central European time, it's at 9 a.m., so you're now starting off your day. We do have some other guests joining from other parts of the world, so thank you once again for your participation. Although we cannot see each other in person due to COVID-19, we have transitioned our event online just to be able to see each other at least face-to-face online. Maybe next year we'll be able to see you here in person. Well then, without further ado, allow me to begin our opening ceremony. And first of all, I'd like to introduce some of our distinguished guests who are joining us. First and foremost, Minister Moon Sung-hyuk of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. Thank you very much, Minister. We also have from the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, Director General Byung Do-hun here with us. And online, we are also graced by the presence of Mr. Francis Zakaria, Ayala Secretary General, Mr. Mick Kinley, CEO at AMSA, and of course, Mr. Andreas Nordset, the Director General of the Danish Maritime Authority, along with some session moderators and speakers as well. Once again, on behalf of the organizing committee, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude and thank you once again for your time and presence. And now, ladies and gentlemen, because it is the opening ceremony, to kick off, I would like to invite our Minister Moon Sung-hyuk of Oceans and Fisheries for his opening remarks. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon from the Republic of Korea. First of all, I'd like to extend my warm welcome to all of you, and I appreciate your presence at the Digital SC Asia Pacific 2021 conference. I wish we could meet face-to-face at this conference this year, had it not for the COVID-19 pandemic. Having said so, I'd like to express my gratitude to Mr. Francis Zakaria, the Secretary General of the International Association of Lighthouse Authorities, Mr. Andreas Nordset, the Director General of the Danish Maritime Authority, for your contribution to this conference. My profound thanks also go to Mr. Gi-taek Lim, the Secretary General of the International Maritime Organization, Mr. Mick Kinley, the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, Mr. Aubrey Kampfer, the Director of the International Hydrographic Organization, who are going to share their important insights on maritime digitalization. In addition, I extend my special appreciation and welcome to the prominent speakers and experts from many parts of the world who participate in this conference. Distinguished guests, I attach great significance to this event, as it is the first conference held in line with the Digital SC initiative that was established among Europe, North America, and the Asia Pacific last year. In particular, the theme of this conference is Leading Digitalization of the Maritime Industry, aimed at contributing to the shared growth by the decarbonization and digitalization in maritime sectors, as well among stakeholders. With this conference, I look forward to jointly addressing the forthcoming 2D era, that is decarbonization and digitalization, by further enhancing the cooperation in the harmonized maritime digitalization among Europe, North America, and the Asia Pacific. Distinguished guests, I'd like to share my vision for this conference in 3 points with you. First, we have lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic on the urgency of introducing non-contact maritime services by digitalization. Digitalization facilitates port automation, green ships, and smart logistics. Therefore, it is an opportunity to enhance the safety of people in the maritime sector, including seafarers, and to create jobs. In this context, I expect, based upon the cooperative system in e-navigation so far, Digital SC initiative to be a platform for leading harmonization across the emerging digital technologies in the maritime sector. Second, in order to facilitate maritime digitalization as a means of providing maximum benefits to all the stakeholders across the globe, an information sharing platform that can be easily accessible internationally needs to be established. To this end, I believe it is important to establish a maritime digital connectivity platform that is compatible among Europe, North America, and the Asia Pacific. Third, to facilitate maritime organization internationally and to foster new industries as well. The international community should strive for the joint validation and verification on the effects of maritime digital technologies that are to be introduced at sea in practice through clusters among regions. I believe we all agree that these objectives cannot be achieved through the efforts of a single country alone. Let us all move forward together for the challenges. Distinguished guests, I expect the world maritime community to be connected through one network. The hyper-connective maritime digital era would be an era that creates the values of co-prosperity for the humanity rather than for particular countries, and towards mutual growth rather than competition. I anticipate this conference will be a valuable opportunity, helping us to take the first step to promote the 2D era, namely decarbonization and digitalization. I'd like to conclude my by wishing that the COVID-19 pandemic be brought to an end as quickly as possible so that our day-to-day lives and global economy can be back on track of normalcy. But most of all, I hope that all of you will keep safe and in good health. Thank you very much indeed for your kind attention. 감사합니다.
Thank you once again, Minister Moon, for your great remarks and, of course, some encouragement as well for the 5th Digital at Sea Asia Pacific Conference. He mentioned that there's two Ds in the maritime industry: digitalization and decarbonization. I believe that our theme for this year is very much in line with these two keywords. And next, we also have some congratulatory remarks from our guests overseas in order to commemorate our event. First of all, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Ki-taek Lim, the Secretary General of the IMO, or the International Maritime Organization. He has sent us a video with his congratulatory message. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him on screen.
Honorable Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is great pleasure to join the Digital at the Sea Asia Pacific Conference 2021 with a timely theme, Leading the Digitalization in the Maritime Industry, which provides an excellent opportunity to discuss the future of shipping. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the value of the fast, effective, and reliable electronic communications. The argument to embrace the digital future has never been clearer. The maritime sector is at the heart of connecting the global supply chain around the world, keeping global trade flowing, including critical supplies. Shipping will also be at the center of the economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and is essential for sustainable growth far into the future. Now is the time to look ahead. We need to take advantage of this opportunity to drive a sustainable maritime future, thanks to all that technology has to offer, whilst continuing to keep seafarers at the core of shipping's future. IMO is working to ensure shipping can take up the digital revolution by developing the regulatory framework to support digitalization in shipping, while ensuring safety, boosting environmental protection, and managing cyber security risks. A priority is the harmonization of electronic messages to facilitate the exchange of information between ship and shore. IMO has developed the electronic data exchange, which is mandatory under the Facilitation Convention since April 2019. A single window for exchange of data with respect to ships' operation to disseminate data to all relevant stakeholders is encouraged. In June 2021, IMO Facilitation Committee approved guidelines for setting up a maritime single window, a new version of the IMO Compendium on Facilitation and Electronic Business. These are critical steps toward harmonized and standardized digitalization. Digitalization also has a part to play in reducing greenhouse gas emissions from ships. IMO is implementing projects on port call optimization and just-in-time arrival of ships to improve port efficiency and to cut ships' fuel consumption and to ultimately decrease emissions from ships. Cooperation between all relevant stakeholders from shipping, ports, and logistics will be vital to drive digitalization of shipping, enhance its efficiency and sustainability, and thereby facilitating trade and fostering economic prosperity. Maritime trade is vital to the world economy. We must continue to enhance the digitalization, efficiency, and sustainability of shipping. In this context, I wish you a very successful conference, which I'm sure will contribute immensely to our common goals to lead the maritime industry into a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you once again. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary General Lim, for your kind words of encouragement and your congratulatory remarks. And we also have another congratulatory message, and this time we go to France. I believe it is the morning time there. So Mr. Francis Zachariae, the Secretary General of IALA, is now joining us live online. So let us check if he is there and if he can hear us. Mr. Zachariae, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can hear you loud and clear. So with that, thank you once again for joining us. Good morning, and please go on with your congratulatory remarks.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, conference delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege to be speaking to you today at the opening session of this Digital at Sea Asia Pacific 2021 conference. As we heard, I am speaking from the IALA headquarters in Paris, but rest assured, I would rather have been with you, all my Korean friends, in Seoul, which is one of my favorite cities. This is the first in the new series that commenced as e-navigation underway in the waters of the Baltic in 2011, under the able hosting of the Danish Maritime Administration, with the support also at that time from IHO, CRM, the Nautical Institute, and the EU-funded Nordic partnership that was known as the Efficiency Program. At that first gathering, an attentive and captive audience was embarked in a ferry steaming from Copenhagen to Oslo and back to Copenhagen again. Little did we realize that a tall tree would grow from the seeds planted in those 3 days early in 2011 and nurtured over a decade. The series grew in courage such that we now arrive at the Digital at Sea Asia Pacific, and my thanks are due to the excellent planning, initiative and resources of the Ministry and Ocean and Fishery of the Republic of Korea, with great support from the Minister. At the same time, I have to thank most warmly the IALA industrial members and the other sponsors who have made these gatherings possible with their generous support. The earlier gatherings were seen as stepping stones to where we are today, incorporating best practices to facilitate the introduction of e-navigation. With this new initiative, Digital at Sea delegates will work to the theme leading the digitalization of the maritime industry. Today and tomorrow, we will hear experts in their respective fields introducing a broad range of topics embracing maritime digital transformation, decarbonization, informatics, autonomous ships, technology, communication and risk and standardization. I look forward to this 2-day program, and on behalf of the IALA Council and our worldwide membership, which is well represented in the Asia Pacific region, I send our good wishes for a successful event. In the huge Asia Pacific region, seafarers depend on an efficient and harmonious provision of marine aids to navigation in all their forms, be they fixed, floating, radio or satellite. It is the efforts of the organization joining us here today that makes this possible for the benefit of mankind. Our host, the Republic of Korea, joined IALA in 1962, 60 years ago next year. Furthermore, I will draw your attention to the respect the membership of IALA has for the Republic of Korea. This was marked by the election to the IALA Council in 2006 at our 10th General Assembly held in Shanghai. In 2018, the Republic of Korea hosted the highly successful 19th IALA conference in Incheon. One of the focal points was the Incheon Declaration to encourage our membership to raise awareness of the need for conservation and management of historic lighthouses as cultural heritage. With 4 associate and 9 industrial members, the Republic of Korea is one of the most active participants in the work of the IALA committees. They have also been one of the most important sponsors to the IALA Worldwide Academy since 2015. The support for IALA from the Republic of Korea is exemplary and unstinting, and today the Republic of Korea holds the IALA presidency for the period to 2022. With regard to the Convention on the International Organization for Marine Aids to Navigation, I'm pleased to report that on the 15th April this year, His Excellency Yo Dae-yong, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to France, signed the instrument. Finally, I have to thank all the participants and speakers for their very kind collaboration and support with respect to the Digital at Sea Asia Pacific, and we at IALA look forward to seeing the fruits of their work in the months and years ahead. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you once again, Mr. Zakaria, for your precious remarks. Indeed, we would love to have you here in Seoul at the earliest possible. Maybe next year we'll be able to see each other in person. Thank you once again for your kind words. Following suit, we also are joined by Mr. Aubrey Canthert, the IHO Director, and he will be delivering his congratulatory remarks once again through a video. Please welcome him on screen.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, I would like to congratulate the organizers of the Digital at Sea 2021 conference for this initiative following on the very successful online e-navigation underway Asia Pacific conference last year, thereby ensuring that no momentum is lost as we are unable to meet in person due to this persistent pandemic. Digitalization of the maritime industry is an ongoing transformation, and data from sensors and other sources of information can be used for decision making and enhanced monitoring, control, quality assurance, and verification, and improving maritime safety. Standardization of the inputs in a format that enables lots of different use cases is, however, required. The known strengths of the IHO expertise lies in ocean mapping and standardization. With the S100 Universal Hydrographic Data Model, the IHO started to develop a versatile standard framework composed of S100-based product specifications so as to describe specific aspects of the real maritime world. The advantage of such datasets based on the same paradigm is their mutual compatibility and the interoperability. The latter supports a multitude of possible combinations of the geoinformation encoded in datasets, independent from which science domain they belong to. Since the S100 standard is not limited to host data product specifications native to the hydrographic domain, the IHO is proactively supporting the expansion of the S100 concept to maritime-related domains, such as the maintenance of fixed and floating aids to navigation, weather and sea ice coverage, route plan exchange format, inland electronic charting, and oceanography. IHO S100's approach is potentially applicable to all sorts of maritime information, including chemistry and biology of the oceans, resulting in interoperable datasets. An all-embracing digital data model in place for all kinds of marine geoinformation based on IHO S100 framework will allow fully interoperable data streams to feed evolving technology for the benefit of the maritime industry. The theme of the conference, Digital at Sea, leading the digitalization of the maritime industry, indicates direction, and the program with expert speakers promises to provide exactly that.
Thank you once again. Please give him another big round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words and your congratulatory video. And last but not least, joining us from Australia, we have Mr. Mick Kinley, the CEO of the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA. I believe that Australia is 1 hour ahead of us, so he will be meeting the evening time a little bit earlier. But Mr. Kinley, are you there and can you hear me?
I am here. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, thank you once again for your participation. So please go ahead with your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And ministers, secretaries general, directors, ladies and gentlemen, good day, annyeonghaseyo from Australia. And it's an honour to have the opportunity to speak amongst such august company. Particularly in this year, which marks the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Korea and Australia. Digital at Sea Asia Pacific, along with the Digital at Sea international events, are the most important global events leading the digitisation of shipping, not from the perspective of commercial gain, but from the important and critical purposes of safety, environment, and making the jobs of seafarers easier. Digital technologies will be crucial on the path to decarbonisation, and whether this is on providing transparency to ensure that all are playing their part, enabling more efficient operations or enabling alternative propulsions, these technologies will be inextricably linked to decarbonisation, and that will be inextricably linked to safety and the working lives of seafarers. I was speaking to a ship operator yesterday who are using technologies in the big form of big data in the high-low platform for safety improvements, using big data and predictive technologies to actually predict what accidents are likely to happen and improve safety. So digitisation is really impacting on all aspects of shipping. The skills that seafarers are going to need into the future are also going to be very different, so they are equipped to deal with this new world, and we members at the IMO really need to start thinking about this and how we are going to take human factors into account with all of this work. So briefly, congratulations to the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea, the Danish Maritime Authority and IALA for organising this event, and the successful evolution of e-navigation underway into something which is much bigger and so important to the future of shipping, and that is the Digital at Sea events. I wish you an engaging and successful conference, and I look forward to the outcomes. Thank you, and good evening from Australia.
Thank you very much for your kind words and, of course, your online live participation with us today. It is slightly earlier for you than for us, but we hope that you will continue to stay with us until the end. Thank you once again. And now it is time for our keynote lecture, ladies and gentlemen. For the keynote speaker, we have Director General Mr. Andreas Nordset of the Danish Maritime Authority. And today he will be discussing or presenting titled Setting Course. So with that, I'd like to welcome him on the screen once again. Mr. Andreas Nordset, can you hear me? I believe that we are trying to address some technical issues. And before we bring him on the screen once again, I'd like to mention that our keynote speaker will be Mr. Andreas Nordset, the Director General of the DMA, Danish Maritime Authority. Today, he will be discussing a very important topic. Of course, one topic that is in our agenda, digitalization and the digital at sea. And his keynote is titled Setting Course. I believe that because he is joining us from Europe, it is a time difference and we do need to sort out some technical issues. But once we do have him back online and ready, we will introduce you to him. Just 1 minute, please. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that our staff are ready and trying to connect with Mr. Andreas Nordset once again. But before we move on, maybe let us take some time to take a commemorative photo before we hear the keynote. A little bit change in the agenda and the process, but I'd like to invite our 5 VIP guests up on stage with me to take the photo first, and then we will reconnect with Director General Andreas Nordset. 네, 지금 귀빈 모시고 사진 촬영 먼저 진행을 하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 안내에 따라 서주시면 감사하겠습니다. 저희가 3번 촬영을 할 예정입니다. 그래서 장관님 잠시만 서 계시면 저희가 촬영을 바로 진행을 하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 한 분 더 모시고 준비가 되셨으면 네, 저희가 첫 번째 촬영하겠습니다. 눈으로 웃으셔야지 마스크를 통해서도 이렇게 웃음이 뚫고 나온다고 합니다. 속으로는 그래도 크게 웃어주시면 감사하겠습니다. 고맙습니다. 네, 다음 슬라이드로 다시 한번 또 찍겠습니다. 네, 이번에는 박수를 한번 쳐볼까요? 박수 좀 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 고맙습니다. 네, 그리고 마지막 슬라이드로 다시 한번 찍겠습니다. 이번에는 화이팅 괜찮으시면 화이팅을 해주시면 감사하겠습니다. 네, 고맙습니다. 네, 감사합니다. 잠시만 기다려주시면 저희 뒤에 저희 연사분들과 함께 또 찍는 사진이 있어서요. 지금 참여하고 계시는 분들과 함께 다시 한번 찍겠습니다. 네, 그리고는 이어서 또 다시 다 모시고 찍겠는데요. Yes, please, we now have our participants and speakers. So can you wave to the camera, please? Say hello to us. All wave. Thank you if you can hear us. And please, big smiles, please. 앞에 계신 5분은 앞쪽으로 봐주시면 되겠습니다. Yes, big smiles. 네, 감사합니다. 이제 저희 다 참석하신 모든 분들과 함께 마지막 찍도록 하겠습니다. 마지막 촬영. Last photo with all of our participants. Thank you once again. A big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. 네, 감사합니다. 네, 자리로 모시겠습니다. Thank you once again. We will now have you back to your seats. Thank you for your participation. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. We will try to reconnect with Director General Andreas Nordset. I believe that we are incurring some technical issues, but after some of our presentations, we will have him back online and we will address the problem and deliver the keynote. Once again, we are going to start the session and the discussions. We have 5 different sessions prepared for the duration of 2 days. The first session that we will proceed with is titled Maritime Digital Transformation for Decarbonization. Decarbonization has been a big issue and a key word in the industry, so we will start off with that. After we have 3 presentations, we will move on to the second session titled Platform, Focus on Informatics. And again, we will have 3 presentations. If you do have any questions during the presentation, please make use of the chat window and post your questions there. Or if not, you can also refer to our official website, the questions conference section. And so then we will be able to deliver all of the questions to our speakers at the Q&A session. And tomorrow we also have a full day planned, so please, we ask for your participation as well. Tomorrow we have a total of 3 different sessions, from core technology and standardization to harmonization on maritime digital transformation, and then last but not least, the Digital at Sea conferences. Tomorrow as well, we will be starting at the same time, 4 p.m. Korea Standard Time, and we will be able to see you with the various different presentations. Tomorrow, the same process. We'll have the chairs and the presentations, and afterwards, the Q&A session. And please make use of the Q&A site for your questions. I will be here today and tomorrow to ensure that a smooth process is ensured for our presenters as well as our participants. We kindly ask for your undivided attention and participation until tomorrow. And now I believe that the stage has been set for us to start the first session. The first session, as I mentioned before, will be titled Maritime Digital Transformation for Decarbonization. And I will also be joined on stage with Mr. Sun Bae-hong, the Director at the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. So now I would like to invite Mr. Sun Bae-hong up on stage with me. We'll see you up on stage. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. And now I have Mr. Sun Bae-hong right next to me here on stage. So thank you for your participation, and say hello.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Nice to meet you. We welcome all of you to our conference today.
Yes, definitely. So thank you once again for joining me here up on stage. Today we will proceed with session 1, and I believe that Mr. Sun Bae-hong also has a lot of expectations. Digitization or digitalization and decarbonization in the maritime industry is one of the key words these days. And I believe that there is also a specific role for digital at sea. So can you explain that to us, please?
Well, Julians, I think the maritime digitalization has 2 kinds of roles. First, the maritime safety, and secondly, maritime efficiency. In particular, digitalization will enable the low-speed operation of the vessel, as well as the minimized time duration of ships staying at the port area. So this should contribute to the dramatical decarbonization in the maritime sectors over the world, I believe.
Yes, I also agree with that. Safety and digitization are some of the very important keywords that are discussed in the industry. And I have a lot of expectations now after hearing Mr. Hong's comments on the presentations that will be delivered today. I believe that we can just start right away with session 1. Session 1, as I mentioned, will be held under the theme of Maritime Digital Transformation for Decarbonization. And it will be chaired by Mr. Bjorn Borby Peterson from the DMA. I believe he is online with us right now. Mr. Peterson?
Mr. Bjorn?
Mr. Peterson, I believe that we are a little bit ahead of our time. So maybe Mr. Hong can help us chair session 1 as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, there should be some kind of technical problem between
I think so, yes.
the platform, especially in the Danish side. So for the time being, while we're waiting for the reconnection with Mr. Bjorn again, I'm going to proceeding this session 1 first.
Yes.
So during my proceeding these sessions, if the Bjorn you are able to connect this platform again, please send some message to my secretariat. So we are going to change the chair right away. Okay, there are 4 speakers in this first session. Maybe the first speakers will be from the Korean side, Chris Institute. So the Dr. Han-Jin Lee is going to make a presentation about this theme of this session, challenges and opportunity on maritime digital transformation, focus on decarbonization. So, Dr. Han, are you ready now to make a presentation? So, okay, so you have the floor, you start your presentation, right?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen from world. I'm Han-Jin Lee from CRISO, Korea. In this presentation, I will introduce the status of decarbonization and the digitalization projects in Korea, especially my company CRISO. A month ago, the result of the working group 1 for IPCC Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change's 6th assessment reports were announced. The report is about the physical science basis of climate changes. This report assesses the climate response to 5 illustrative scenarios of climate change. They started in 2015. In the figure, the 2 scenarios are about high-end. For example, the 2 scenarios are high-end and very high GHG, greenhouse gas, and CO2 emissions that roughly double from current level by 2100 and 2050, respectively. In the table, compared to 1850 to 1900, the global surface temperature average over 2081 to 2100 is likely to be higher by about 1.4 degrees Celsius under the very low greenhouse gas emissions scenario, by 2.7 in the intermediate scenario, and by 4.4 degree under the very high GHG emission scenario. Almost every nation on Earth signed up to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015. This agreement aims to keep the rising global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius this century, and pursue efforts to keep it under 1.5 degree. But this new report says that under almost all emissions scenarios, both targets will be broken this century unless huge carbon cut occurs. The figure on the right shows the outlook for maritime ship emissions compared to 2008. In several long-term scenarios, emissions are projected to increase from about 90% of 2008 emissions in 2018 to up to 130% emissions by 2050. Shipping today is experiencing increasing pressure to decarbonize its operations and to reduce emissions to the air. In April 2018, the IMO adopted an ambitious GHG reduction strategy with a vision to decarbonize shipping as soon as possible within this century. With 2008 as a baseline year, this strategy aims to reduce at least 50% of total GHG emissions from shipping by 2050. At the same time, it also aims to reduce the average carbon intensity by at least 40% by 2030 and 70% before mid-century. MEPC 72 adopted the resolution, Initial IMO Strategy on Reduction of GHG Emissions from Ships. This initial strategy identifies that a program of follow-up actions of the initial strategy should be developed. The program of follow-up actions include 8 streams of activity. The table shows the 8 streams of activities. The table on the screen shows the action plan through 2023 for the 8 streams of activity. At the MEPC 76 in June of this year, guidelines for implementing short-term measures to reduce carbon intensity indicators were adopted. Mid to long-term measures to reduce GHG emissions from ships were discussed too. The short-term measures aims to achieve the target set in the IMO initial GHG strategy to reduce the carbon intensity of all ships by 40% by 2030. IMO requires all ships to calculate their energy efficiency existing ship index, EEXI, and establish their annual operational carbon intensity indicator, CII, and CII ratings. In other words, ships get a rating of their energy efficiency A, B, C, D, and E. A ship running on a low carbon fuel gets a higher ratings than one running on fossil fuel. There are many things a ship can do to improve its rating through various measures. They are full cleaning to reduce drag, speed optimization, low energy light bulbs, solar or wind auxiliary power to accommodation services, etc. The key to achieving emissions reduction is developing, maturing, and scaling up solutions to a level where the cost is acceptable. Technical and operational measures can achieve a significant GHG reduction, but up to 100% GHG reduction can only be achieved with alternative fuels. In the short term, equipment that improve energy efficiency can be used. However, ultimately, low-carbon fuels such as LNG, methanol, and carbon-free fuels such as ammonia, hydrogen are inevitable to satisfy the IMO's GHG reduction measures. From 2023, existing ships will be subject to EEXI and CII regulations. EEXI should be calculated for ships of 400 gross tons and above under the different value set for ship types and size categories. EEXI indicates the energy efficiency of a ship compared to a baseline. CII, carbon intensity indicator, determines the annual reduction factor required to improve the ship's operational carbon intensity continuously. The actual annual operational CII achieved must be documented and verified against the required annual operational CII. This determines the operational carbon intensity rating of the vessel. The performance level would be recorded in the ship's Ship Energy Efficiency Management Plan, SEEMP. A ship rated D for 3 consecutive years, or E, would have to submit a corrective action plan to show how to achieve the index C or above. To minimize GHG reduction from ships, conventional technology should be combined with alternative fuels and power systems. CRISOP, my company, is researching the development and the demonstration of energy efficiency improvement devices through simulation and model testing to respond to this situation. Recently, the scope of research is being expanded to include eco-friendly alternative fuel propulsion systems, such as ammonia and electric batteries, and so on. Due to the limitation of existing GHG reduction technology, it is inevitable to use alternative fuels and power systems. To respond to IMO environmental regulations, next generation ship propulsion systems will be very diverse. It is expected that optimal solution will vary depending on the size and the type of vessels. CRISO is researching optimal fuels and propulsion system configurations for small coastal ships and large offshore ships, respectively. The major technologies for reducing GHG emissions from ships currently being researched by CRISO are divided into three parts. The first about the propulsion technology of eco-friendly alternative fuels. The second is about the configuration of the power system, operation status monitoring, and operation optimization technology. The last is about new hull form development and energy-saving devices. There are many types of eco-friendly alternative fuels, such as LNG, ammonia, hydrogen, and the battery were analyzed and summarized in the table. Now, fuel for vessels must be eco-friendly. Additionally, fuel supply, space utilization, and shipbuilding cost should be considered. This table summarizes the current state in consideration of the use of ammonia or hydrogen co-firing engines and the use of hybrid electric propulsion engines, and so on. The problem is the current level of technology, required space, and additional facilities, etc. Ammonia, hydrogen, and electric batteries have very low energy densities in terms of volume. So this means that the system size required to store the same energy increased. It is one of the important reasons why the optimal solutions should be different depending on the size and the type of vessel. There is not yet single solution, and various means will be mixed, I think. In many cases, it is expected to be used in conjunction with existing propulsion systems in hybrid form. From now on, I will introduce representative projects carried out or planned by CRISO, my company, related to decarbonization. The first is the development of an electric-powered car ferry funded by the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. The electrically propelled car ferry under construction runs 100 on electricity. This car ferry will utilize the removable power supply system, which means that ports don't need high voltage facility for direct charging. The system overcomes the challenges of the Korean coastal environment with a large tidal range and frequent flooding due to typhoons. In the removable battery system, a vehicle carrying the battery is loaded onto the car ferry, and the vehicle is connected to the car ferry. It provides electricity for propulsion and operations. It means that the battery system have fields to move. Upon its completion in 2022, the car ferry will enter the commercial market by 2023, following test sales, optimizations, etc. The total budget of this project is about $40 million. This project is about one-stop solution for eco-friendly ship propulsion engine testing. The objective of the project is the development of the integrity test platform. The platform will allow the testing and the verification of a wide range of ship propulsion engines, including electric and on-ship hydrogen power. The Korean government, MOF, is responding proactively to new maritime environmental regulations and emerging eco-friendly ship market with new legislation, such as the Act of Promoting the Development and the Distribution of Eco-Friendly Ships and the announcement of the 2030 Green Ship K strategy in 2020. The project to develop the eco-friendly ship test platform is part of the initiative. The budget of this project is about $30 million. Eco-friendly shipbuilding corporations and research institutions will be able to conduct cost-effective testing on their new technologies in this facility when project is completed in 2025. Next year, a new large-scale eco-friendly ship development project will begin. The name of the project is Greenship 3170. The Greenship 3170 project supports the full cycle from eco-friendly ship technology development to its commercialization. The project includes eco-friendly ship key technology development, testing and evaluation technology development, offshore demonstration and operation data acquisition, standardization, and law and regulation improvement. The project aims to develop and commercialize technology to reduce GHG emissions from ships by 70% or more by 2031. So the name of the project is 3170 Green Ship. The total budget is about $200 million. Although the organization responsible for the project has not been decided yet, but CRISO plans to participate in some form. Now, so far I have only looked at projects related to decarbonization. From now on, I will introduce the content related to digitalization. Examples of digitalization for decarbonization can be broadly classified into three categories. The first example is about the current navigation technology. The digitalized smart ship will present the optimal operation condition to the navigator by pre-calculating the expected fuel consumption. Furthermore, through port-to-ship interaction, it is expected that it will be possible to identify the traffic situation at the target port in advance, and to present the optimum vessel speed to minimize the time and GHG emission at anchorage. Next, it will be possible to reduce GHG emissions by predicting routes that can minimize fuel consumption by using big data such as weather environment, engine performance, and ship traffic flow. Finally, various fuel combinations such as LNG, ammonia, hydrogen, and electric batteries will be used in future eco-friendly ships. Therefore, the ship's propulsion engine and the control system will be very complex to match that fuel. Through digitalization, new smart ships will be able to provide designers and navigators with much data for designing the eco-friendly fuel propulsion system and the optimal operation method after manufacturing. These digitalization smart ships are expected to contribute to decarbonization greatly. Digital services for ships that can be easily conceived include monitoring and managing smart ships and optimal route guidance for ships. The picture on the left shows the general situation of the smart ship monitoring service. This site is Hyundai Global Services Digital Innovation Center, mainly managing Hyundai Heavy Industries smart ships. The picture on the right side is an example of using the safe route guidance service developed by Smart Navigation. The picture is the result of the Smart Navigation development project. This service is for small vessels such as fishing boats and provide a safe route to avoid low water depths, dangerous objects, and the various no-go areas. Unlike the general weather routing service, it aims to secure the safety of small ships in Korean waters. However, I think the essence of digital transformation in ships is maritime autonomous surface ships, MAS. The Korean government also started the Korea Autonomous Surface Ships project in 2020. It was jointly funded by MOF and the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. The total budget is about $130 million. CRISO and the Korean Register formed the project office together. The project's objectives are the development of core technology of autonomous ships and laying the foundation for commercialization. This project plans to build a medium-sized merchant ship engaged in international voyage to test the performance of maritime autonomous surface ship. It is planned to operate the ship at IMO level 3 in the ocean and the level 2 on the coast. Of course, a project for the port digital transformation will also start next year. This project aims to develop an information chain between the ship information systems such as navigation, the port information system, and the hinterland information system to improve the efficiency of port logistics and to protect the environment in the port. The task is divided into 3 groups. The first is to collect the data needed to build the information chain and standardize the data format. The second group relates to reasoning missing links necessary to construct an information chain network using AI technologies such as deep learning. The final part is to develop a prototype to examine the effectiveness of the services. The total budget is about $12 million. Chris plans to participate in this project as well. So far, it can be expected that this digitalization project will increase the operational efficiency of ships and ports, and that the result will lead to a reduction of GHG, greenhouse gas. However, digitalization projects that directly aims to reduce GHGSC have not yet been carried out in Korea. Almost all digitalization project aims to increase efficiency. GHG reduction is the effect resulting from increased efficiency. Now, I think it is necessary to expand the scope of digitalization to include new decarbonization technology, as well as obtain GHG reduction effect from the result of digitalization projects. Most decarbonization projects aim to develop new propulsion systems using alternative fuels. For ships equipped with such a propulsion system to be commercialized, monitoring and maintenance service for complex eco-friendly propulsion system must be provided. Furthermore, it must be possible to calculate and optimize the consumption of alternative fuels under various operating conditions to ensure navigation with the lowest actual energy consumption. Finally, based on these technologies, route planning and port optimization should be possible considering alternative fuel supply chains, port situations, and GHG reductions. In conclusion, I think the development of digitalization technology focusing on decarbonization technology should be considered for effective environment protection and effective GHG reduction. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Han, for your presentations. While we're listening to the presentation, I believe that Mr. Byun is connected to this conference. Byun, do you hear me now? So, Byun, so let's resume the session 1 again. I believe that Mr. Ulf Sue is ready to make a presentation, right? Ulf, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay.
I'm here, and I hope that you can put on my slides there.
Yes, we have.
Yes. Thank you. So, sea traffic management, we've been part of e-navigation for a long time. And we've been at the first e-navigation underway conference, and now we're at the first digital at sea conference Asia Pacific. And We're really looking forward to cooperate with the Republic of Korea for many years to come. It was really interesting to learn about the projects that Han-Jin Lee from CRISO presented. I see a lot of things coming together. So what is sea traffic management? Basically, it's information. Sorry, I just need to confirm. Is there an echo for you or only for me?
On our side, it's
okay.
okay, yes.
Good, perfect. Then I'll go on. So it's basically operational benefits and coming from information exchange. And with the using the first operational instance of that platform that was mentioned in the opening speak, an easy platform for everyone to use. And going towards decarbonization, here are 3 measures that sea traffic management helps decarbonization by doing other stuff that gives us benefits, by sailing safer, by loading faster, and by sailing slower. So let's dig into the details. And we start at sailing safer. In one of our projects, we looked at the archipelagos between Sweden and Finland. And how could we do meeting optimization here? Because in this area, we sail 5 to 6 hours in Sweden and in Finland even more. And it's very narrow and many places where ships cannot meet. So we have provided all the pilots and all the ferry tools that can show the meeting points, projected meeting points with all ships traveling in both directions. And then the pilot and the captains can move the meeting point to just speed. In this example, you see there's a cross where the projected place of meeting, and then you can move that and meet in a better place. This slide is showing a particular critical point in the approach to Stockholm, and you have the place where it's really narrow, and then you have the other ship almost sliding sideways. It's difficult to slow down at that point. So on the next slide, you see an actual case from the project. One ship was sailing in towards Stockholm and one coming out, and the projection was that they were going to meet in the most narrow point. So they adjusted that. It's just 5 minutes sailing to a much better place, and that meant they could slow down. And the effect of this slowing down, if you take the next one, was actually that they were saving 3% of the fuel while sailing. So the aim is to sail safer, and the side effect is that we actually make less carbon emissions, and that's really good. So that's sailing safer. Loading faster, we have a couple of bullet points to look at. Every port really wants faster turnaround times to give a better service to all the transport chain. So they're looking at technology, there are the cranes, etc. But what sea traffic management brings is information to improve the operations, because the biggest problem in ports are waiting times. And how can information change that? Well, when all actors have a standardized timestamp and know what things are starting and stopping, they can do much better plan and use the resources in a much better way. And one effect to that is that, well, it's not that long time a ship is in port and compared to the whole voyage. So it's not that much emission that is being saved. It's just about 1% of the total that can be saved. But if you look on the next slide, this 1% is really important for the ports, because their major problem is that air emissions, local air emissions, that's their biggest challenge for environmental reasons. And that's because the ports are usually very close to a city and a big polluter in the city area. This faster turnaround time can also mean they can use the quays and all the resources in the ports better, which means that in the future they might not even have to expand the port. They can use the current infrastructure better. So that was loading faster. Let's go to sailing slower. And we've looked at this for a long time. My colleague, Jose, who will be presenting after me, was involved in this study that calculated it on a lot of data and came to the conclusion that up to 20% can be saved by adjusting the speed arriving just in time. So this was one study. What did the other studies say? Well, on the next slide, you see that IMO did, with their Global Industry Alliance, did a calculation. And they did this for the 24 or 48 hours before arriving. So even at that time, they could see a saving around 8–9%. So the longer you can slow down, the more you can save, which explains the 20% in the previous slide. But these are just theories. What does it look in practice? If you look at what we did in the STM validation project, we had this example, a tanker sailing, and it received the notice that the berth was full. They couldn't arrive, they couldn't start offloading until a certain hour. So they decided to slow down, and they saved fuel and saved money. And this saving money is really an incentive for the shipping companies. So that's good, because that's what we want. We want them to be winners. We want all involved actors to be winners. And then the biggest winner will be the actually climate. So this happened then. What happens now? On the next slide, you can see how it's taken. This is spreading. This is in operations in the port of Tangier Med, using systems in port and systems on board the ship, and they can really achieve savings. What does this mean for the ports? Well, it's not just information sharing, but it's also changing some of the rules. This rule has been happening through the maritime world for a long time. First come, first serve. But that means that everyone is steaming ahead and then wait. What we have replaced it in some STM projects, and being in operations, continued operations after the project, is replacing the first come, first serve procedures with a queue system with slot times. And that is common practice for container shipping, but they, in this port, they've introduced it slot times at their energy terminal. So tankers and other wet bulk are actually now sailing just in time to this port. And that's one part of the maritime industry where there is the most potential. So now I want us to get in the groove. And if you recognize the lyrics, it's from a Daft Punk song. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, makes us stronger. And I want you to put in the groove. And I'm just going to do a short little, I'm going to leave my chair, but I will be back very soon. Because to get in the real groove, you need to have the disco ball turning. And now do you hear this song in your head? Work it harder, make it, do it. Okay, if you do, let's go into decarbonization groove. Hit it. Sailing safer, loading faster, sailing slower makes us better. So this is the new theme song for decarbonization for our future. And with that, I say thank you from my side. And when we meet next time, I will play the song and we will sing all together.
Well, that was a great mnemonic as well as the song that you had created for us. What was it? Sailing safer, loading faster. I forget the third line, and then it said make it better. So thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. So our Bjorn, you can proceed your chairing for the last speaker.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're very clear, loud. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Songbei. This was the first decarbonization song and dance even I've ever seen. So I think the transformation here is in full progress. And Ulf gave some thoughts about and insights into our next speaker with the just-in-time project. And it will be interesting to hear what Jose Gimenez has to say and give some more detail on that project. So over to you, Jose.
Okay, I hope that you hear me well. Okay. Distinguished authorities and delegates, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning from Spain.
Yes, Jose, can you continue on, please?
Sorry, I was muted.
I see, yes.
Okay, can you hear me well now?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, I hope that you are seeing my slides as well.
Yes.
Perfect. So I was just introducing the topic of my presentation. Is focused on the Common Innovation European Initiative on the just-in-time arrivals domain and how we intend to build it in line with the continuous improvement towards enhanced efficiency and maritime port decarbonization. I will start with a short background about why it's important for ports and the maritime industry to progress towards just-in-time operations. First of all, I think it's worth to say that there is a recognized need by the industry, both ports and shipping, about the absence of useful and harmonized operational standards. This lack of suitable standards has contributed to fix some structural inefficiencies in the sector, especially when maritime transport interfaces with ports. Waiting times and congestion at many ports and maritime areas, which contribute to generate large amount of additional greenhouse gas emissions. These are examples of this. In this context, IMO has set up several resolutions to facilitate the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in shipping by optimizing navigation speed and by promoting the collaboration among agents, both from the port and from the shipping worlds, involved in the management of port calls. So, looking at this particular piece of the process, we can say that from the operational point of view, the port call process still relies very much on non-digital communication means, with the particularity that this is a very fragmented process with multiple agents involved that require accurate information in real time to perform their activities. This situation involving non-digital culture generates high volumes of redundant, non-structured and non-standardized information that contributes to maintain these inefficiencies. On the other hand, we see a relevant environmental benefit in terms of greenhouse gas emissions saving when applying different degrees of just-in-time navigation and arrivals at ports. As my previous colleague, Ulf, that has performed a great song, and I have to learn the lyrics, he advanced that during the STM validation project, we simulated different scenarios using 1 year of real AIS data and different scenarios considering speed reduction. And the results showed that potential reductions up to 20% of CO2 and SOx emissions, depending on the degree of speed reduction. But these first studies show a promising potential improvement if the industry is able to adopt efficient instruments to deploy and to work on this just-in-time arrivals schema. So I will move then to explain about the European initiative that we are trying to build. We are at this moment we're building that. We think that to set in this initiative at European level, of course, this requires a strategy which could be deployed with these phases, the following phases that I will mention. First, defining a unique language to address the port call process stages and provide harmonized definitions. As I mentioned before, the port call process still lacks of these common accepted standards. So this is a relevant phase that we should focus on. Then develop and deploy the technological layer able to interconnect, to transmit and visualize the information generated in the port call process. And finally, test these technologies and solutions in the real operations and measure the impact in terms of efficiency, time savings compared to previous situations, for example, and emission savings compared as well to the previous scenario. Which benefits could we expect from the application of this strategy? You are seeing this in the next slide. We have mentioned some of them before. Introducing digitalization in the port call process, not for the sake of digitalization in itself, but for the consequences generated thanks to this change in culture. We may find the ability to update, share, and receive accurate and reliable information in real time to and from all agents involved in the port call operations. Also allowing direct communication with the ship even before the arrival, thus increasing the planning capacity of the port and therefore the operational capacity. And of course, increase the situational awareness and increase safety conditions during the operations. And I must say that this is just the beginning because there is a big room for new technologies like artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, big data. All these new Industry 4.0 new disciplines will transform the sector and can be applied in this particular piece of the process, this strategic process, the port call. So just to end in some practical application of this strategy in this, with this innovation approach, we see different levels in the application of just-in-time arrivals of ships and with ports. The first level that we consider refers to the intra-port coordination among the port call service providers. Here we can consider, for example, the pilots associations, towage and mooring companies, and also traffic control operators. It must be said that the coordination among these agents speaking in general, is done today by non-digital means. And here we are talking about the pure execution process when the ship is already entering into the port. So this requires, as I was saying before, a change in the working culture and in the introduction of these new technologies. Going further, if we expand this scope, another level of integration refers to the port operators, the port authorities, which have a relevant role in the management of the berthing slots. This is in the next slide. Thank you. And the coordination of cargo operations for the ship. Here we introduce the concept of planning of the port call as terminals and port authorities manage in advance information about the estimated time of arrivals, the start, end of operations and departures, and other key events of the port call process. And finally, as a third level and holistic level, we could say we consider the integration of the previous situations that you have seen, involving all the agents under the same communication ecosystem, and also the ship even before the arrival. Within this environment, all the information related to the port call process could be shared in real time, providing great visibility of the port call process to all the agents involved. And this is a very wide benefit for all the industry. Obviously, achieving this framework requires the deployment of digital solutions that make available the different events and timestamps to everyone under common formats. And I'm finalizing my intervention with this initial message about the need of appropriate standards to be adopted by the industry in order to make this approach a reality. As today, to represent and manage the complexity of the maritime port interface, it requires a digital ecosystem and a compendium of harmonized standards. So that was my intervention, my presentation. This is my last slide. So I really thank you for your attention and thank you for inviting me to this great conference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bjorn. So we listened to all speakers in session 1. So maybe this is a Q&A session of session 1. Maybe I'd like to make a question from this studio first. Bjorn, is it okay for me to make a question?
Perfectly okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. I'm going to make a question to both speakers, Mr. Ulfsue and Jose Gimenez. But one of you can answer to my questions. So I believe your service, STM service, as well as the GIT service, is very useful to increase the port operation as well as the ship's operation, so as to decrease the oil consumption and for the decarbonization as a result of that. So I believe both service is provided and used among all actors based on a platform, right? So, of course, in Korea, we are now providing a e-navigation service based on a platform, exactly the maritime connectivity platform. So, if GIT service and STM service want to be provided and used by all actors globally, there should be some kind of harmonization in the harmonized information exchange among the platform, among the different platforms. So is there any ideas to secure some kind of harmonized way among the different platforms that used in European side for the service of GIT service or STM service, and our platform providing smart navigation service in Korea? So I'd like to listen some answer to my question from Mr. Ulfsue or Jose Gimenez. I don't care. Who is going to answer to my question?
Well, I can give the room to Ulf if he wants to answer. But I don't see him. So maybe I could say that I think that here interoperability is a key aspect to take into account, and regarding the standardization and defining common formats, I can say that IMO is promoting the development of a wide standard focused on the port call process to harmonize all the different subphases within this process. And there are several committees at this moment working on the development of this standard. So I see that in order to consider also the compatibility with platforms like this smart navigation platform, of course, it should be taken into account the current formats that this platform is using and how we can help and we can support to establish this compatibility in terms of formatting, messaging, electronic messaging, and interoperability.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Yose. As you answered right now, maybe I believe the interoperability between the different platforms used in each respective regions to the validating and verifying the actual interoperability and effectiveness of your service is very important to make your service facilitating globally. From the point of view, tomorrow the session is going to talking about the cluster to verify and validate each such kind of services globally, the effectiveness and the best practices. So we'd very appreciate it for you to participate in tomorrow's discussion on clusters to solve such kind of problems. Thank you so much. Mr. Byun, you can continue your Q&A session.
Thank you, Sun Bei. I got a couple of questions from the audience. One for Mr. Ulf Sive. See if we could get him to answer this one. There is a question from an audience that think the STM is a very promising project, and the services could have been necessary to expand them around the world, not just including Europe, but the whole world. And the question is, what is the most necessary thing for these services to be expanded around the world? Ulf, can you answer that?
Yes, if you can hear me and perhaps even see me. I think it's a lot about what we talk about, chicken and egg situation. But what we can see now is that ports around the world see that they can gain a lot of benefits even if all the ships are not connected. So the ports and other shoreside actors will probably be the ones who will drive this forward, and the ships will join when they see that there are many ports that have this information, so the information exchange can start growing. So that's I think that's the way it's going to happen.
So from the ground up, you could say, in the market.
A lot of market. What's also happening is that SMA, the Swedish Maritime Administration, has put forward an output paper to IMO to promote also a working working group to look at making some of this information sharing part of the mandatory information. But that will take some time, but there's also this will from the international community to look at the new solutions and push them forward.
All right, great. Thank you, Ulf. I think that concludes my questions here. Is there any more questions from the studio?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. So, thank you for your chairing the beautiful session 1. And so let's move on to the next session. So, because we have no more audience with the questions here. Thank you so much, Mr. Bjorn.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I guess that concludes session 1. Once again, we deeply apologize for the technical difficulty that we had in the middle, but I believe that we have resolved some of our problems and we are back on track. So with that, I think maybe Mr. Hong, you should give us a wrap-up or a summary of session 1. How did you think?
Yeah, I think even though our session is delayed about half an hour today, but we got a very beautiful and excellent presentation on the decarbonization through the maritime digitalization, especially the STM service and GIT service is very useful. And I wish these two kinds of service to be globalized as soon as possible.
Well, thank you very much for the summary or wrap-up. And now I believe that we should go on to session 2. Are there any expectations that you have for session 2?
Yeah, session 2 is focusing on the platform. This is very related to the first session 1 to exchange the harmonized information exchange among all relative actors to increase the efficiency in port area as well as ship operation. So anyway, let's proceed on the session right way. The chair is Mr. Thomas Christensen, right?
That's right. So session 2 will be chaired by Mr. Thomas Christensen from the MCC, and he will be leading the discussions for session 2, a platform focus on informatics. So Mr. Christensen, thank you very much for taking this step as a chairperson. And I believe you are connected right now. And so if you can hear us, please proceed.
Yes, I hope so. Am I getting through?
Yeah, very loud and clear. So good.
Okay, excellent. Good. Thank you very much, and delighted to be here. And I hope that I can make my small contribution to make this a fruitful conference, despite the small technical hiccups we've been experiencing. But there's not been much time allocated to make a big introduction of the speakers, so I'll just very briefly say that our first speaker is Jeppe Juul, Manager of Maritime Safety and Security at BIMCO, and he'll be speaking about developments in maritime digitalization. So Jeppe, the cyberspace is yours.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you to Digital at CE Asia for both asking me to present and also for hosting this conference. I just want to say that with 15 minutes available, I will keep the presentation of my organization to the possible shortest by saying that BIMCO is one of the largest direct membership organizations for ship owners, charters, ship brokers and agents, and that we are covering about 60% of the world fleet across shipping segments. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it's actually making sense when I do the presentation. Although maritime transport in general is the backbone of world command, maritime digitalization has, at least in the past, been lacking significantly behind. But we also see that due to the unfortunate COVID pandemic outbreak, it has given industry some kind of a positive side effect, where we have been forced to re-examine our normal routines when we are doing shipping. And in this regard, to digitalization, shipping has simply been taking a gigantic leap forward by working digitally. But digitalization is not necessarily only by making internet faster, having better connections, collecting more data, do things in an operative way. It's also about developing smart human interfaces with the technology available, so we don't have to invest in new solution. And in that way, we will become more efficient as an industry in general. Everyone in the maritime industry is looking for competitive advantages, and many see the fields of digitalization as simply just one of them. And it's essential, as some of the previous speakers just mentioned, that we need to collaborate across industry instead of competing, of having the best, the biggest, the shiniest solutions, but instead trying to come together and see if we can find common solutions instead. So my presentation today will give you a high level of comments with regard to digitalization. Next, please. Oh, I think you need to go back to the sustainable goals. Very first slide, please. This one. I will tell you next when to change. Thank you. Next. This one. Please stay. Billions of people around the world rely on the maritime transport in their daily life. And many, although they don't know or they don't realize that they are relying on the maritime transport. And maritime transport is the most cost efficient, it's the most fuel efficient way to carry goods. Shipping forms and is simply just a backbone of world trade. So no doubt that the hottest topics when listening to many conferences today are about this UN sustainable goals and also how to comply with the Paris Agreement. And most of the 17 goals, which you can see at the monitor right now, and their associated 169 targets, may only be realized if a sustainable transport sector are supporting the world trade in general, facilitating the global economy. And hence, the shipping sector, we do have an obligation to contribute with our share. And digitalization is simply just one of them, because it's one by many initiatives. Please go to the next slide. Thank you. All people in the maritime industry we are aware that IMO developed these greenhouse gas reduction strategies, and we heard one of the presentation previous by Han Yin Lee, where he mentioned the IMO strategy. But the strategy is not only by reducing the greenhouse gases, but it's also about streamlining the shipping processes in general. In this regard, also to become more efficient. And to reach these goals, the whole industry will have to work together by using of our old phrase, not working harder, but smarter. However, in this regard, it's important to emphasize that it's not only by making the internet faster, it's by doing smart solutions. We need to collaborate, we need to find interoperable solutions across all systems and all platforms. Now please go to the next one. There are lots of different interpretation of what digitalization is, depending on who you're asking and what ecosystem you ask the question. If you ask the people in the operational department, they will say that digitalization is about getting sensor readings and fuel consumption and exhaust temperatures and so on and so forth. But if you go to the charterer, for instance, they are very keen on getting information about the ship position, the condition of the cargo, and how the handling of the loading and unloading is going on. That is, of course, on top of the ship safety and the crew and the cargo conditions. But if you, at the other hand, go to the hinterland and the port, they do pay attention to when the ship is arriving and when it's departing time and so on and so forth. And if you again ask the administrative authority, it's about details in the information on the exchange, information exchange prior and after the port call. So all stakeholders do have different interpretation of what digitalization is. When we're asking our members, we get information about they seeking information about how the connecting that what happens at sea, we need to know ashore. It's also about predicting the movements of the operation. It's about harmonization, seamless data integration, and so on and so forth. So by condensing this kind of information, it's connecting, it's predicting, it's information transparency, it's integration, and it's harmonization. 5 elements. And all these elements shall be exchanged in a simple, smooth, smart, and interoperable way. With this in mind, we believe that maritime digitalization can be separated into a very few processes, which generally can be divided in these 3 stages: automation, optimization, and transformation. And these 3 stages are closely linked. And one could say that it's a bottom-up approach, that we establish the foundation first and then build on top. Some are more keen of establishing a concept before we actually go further down in the hierarchy. I prefer that we see this as a bottom-up approach. Now I will take these 3 stages one by one and explain a bit more. So please stay at this slide. Thank you. Ship owners are increasingly looking into the potential of automation in shipping. And if we can find new solutions with the existing hardware, this is to the benefit of everybody. But we also see that automation in general may lead to a significant cost reduction. So automation has certainly been gaining traction among ship owners to become an enabler for greater efficiency and cost saving. And I like to make use of the old phrase or the old classic argument saying that if you cannot monitor and measure, you cannot control your systems. And this is exactly what it is about. It's a bottom-up approach where we need to have all the sensor systems in place before we can proceed. Having sensors, please go back to the previous slide. Thank you. I will tell you when to change. Thank you. Having sensors and system collecting data in a central, in a common way, it's essential for the general shipping in order for us to exchange data. We should look into this already by the existing ships, but it's of course much easier and more cheaper when we are looking into new ships. There are lots of different systems which need to be integrated, and for that reason it's difficult with existing by retrofitting. Many systems do speak different languages or have different interfaces, so this makes it more complex. Automation is very close to the next step, so please go to the next slide. When we have all the sensors in place, we can go to the next step, which is optimization. And combining all the sensors and all the outreach we have from the sensors, we can optimize these solutions. New business opportunities may include the blockchain technology for bunkering. It could be cargo tracking or smart capacity management platforms or recycling and waste management and all that. But the more and more ship navigation systems and port terminal processes are becoming automated. And several initiatives are assessing these optimization opportunities with these new technologies. And one of the low-hanging fruits was some of the processes we heard from the previous presentation is the port call optimization, where we optimize the speed and the route, and whereby we can reduce carbon dioxide emission and also the waiting in the ports. Ships are often steaming full speed ahead, calling the next port, and then they drop their anchor and stay outside the port, waiting for the berth to be ready. And it's obvious that such mode of operation is simply not good for the environment. So the port authorities and terminal operators are these days joining forces, like we heard, to simply optimize the exchange of information, the exchange of data, so they can optimize the supply chain. Just in time is one of the better concepts which we believe will simply bring the shipping and digitalization as a driver to the next step. Keep on this slide. I just want to say that speaking about the just-in-time, BIMCO members has asked us to develop a brand new clause for the use in contracts related to the just-in-time. The philosophy is that each hour spent outside the port just waiting for the berth to be ready is simply just a waste of efficiency and brings us additional emissions, which is not to the benefit of the sustainable goals nor the IMO strategy. Normally, ships has to proceed according to the contract on what we call the utmost dispatch, which means that they simply just have to run to the next port and wait orders before they can proceed. Please go to the next slide. No, the next slide. The previous where the red box is at the bottom. This one, please. Thank you. Concerning transformation, this is where we combine the automation and the optimization in new solution to technology-driven efficiencies in order for us, the supply chain, to become much more efficient. Digitalization will simply just transform not only the port and the shipping business in general, but it will also transform our way of combining the technologies. And in this regard, the autonomous shipping and the positive side effects following the autonomous shipping is simply just one of them. You can see at the slide, I mentioned the augmented reality and artificial intelligence, and all that can be combined and used. But it's only when we have the bottom-up approach in place, we have the foundation ready, which is automation and optimization. Then we can proceed to the next step. We cannot cut any of these steps because then we will simply not be ready for the full transformation. Please go to the next slide. I have 2 slides left. Where are we in the process? It is obvious that harmonization and communication is vital for this to succeed. For the digitalization and data exchange to work efficiently, we simply need to have common standards in place. And I think it was Jose who mentioned that the IMO has a common reference data model in place, which certainly should be one of the key stepstones towards digitalization. Just before the summer break, in June 2021, IMO Facilitation Committee concluded at one of the sessions on a new tool for measuring domestic implementation of the FAL Convention. In this regard, also how the member states of the IMO have implemented the digitalization within the port calls process. And BIMCO is, of course, very positive to this initiative, and we are looking forward to the reports and hope for the best on all that. And then we look into a survey, a questionnaire issued by the IAPH, which is the International Association for Ports and Harbors. And they have been doing this survey, and it reveals that only 30% of the responding ports comply with the mandatory IMO requirements. And interestingly, it's the main barriers to digitalize cited by the ports were the legal framework within the country or the region. It's a kind of human capital limitation. And it's not the technology which is a cumbersome problem. So this brings to a kind of conclusion saying that cooperation across technologies is so important. Although the technologies and standards for data sharing is in place, many stakeholders simply just are not prepared to embrace them and make use of it. And some do even refuse to make use of common international standards. And there be reasons for that, either because of ignorance or lack of awareness of new standards or general standards in place. Or it may be so that they simply want to push for a regional or national standard to maybe to become international. And that is not to the benefit of the digitalization in general. If that is the case, that we only by global regulation can force the policymakers to facilitate cooperation between platforms and solutions, then I think actually we are in a not so good position. We should have much better collaboration within the industry, which will not be forced by regulation. We also may have a kind of educational challenge. Maritime informatics may be a new language for us. It may be a new discipline. There will be a presentation by tomorrow by my good friend Michael Lind from RISE, who will explain more about the maritime informatics, but that will be tomorrow, hopefully. My last slide is a kind of outlook for where we are with regard to digitalization. There are a few things I want you to remember. And one of them is that harmonization and interoperability is key to success for the sustainable maritime digitalization. It's not about having the biggest and the shiniest solution. It's simply just having use of the common standards. And new technologies could be the maritime connectivity platform. It could be use of digital twin, but we can only go along these new technologies if we have a common platform in place, and that will be for instance, the IMO data model or the IMO compendium, which sets out the data model. So to conclude, developments in the maritime digitalization is about using technology in a smarter way to reduce cost. And it's, of course, to push for new services on a global market. But do this with good collaboration, good harmonization. Otherwise, we will never see digitalization in the maritime area. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jeppe. We will take the questions at the end of the session. And just for the secretariat, there's a lot of echo in Zoom. I don't know if it's possible to mute the other channels than the speaker, then maybe it could be removed. Anyway, we'll move on, and I'm particularly delighted to present the next speaker, Thomas Christensen, Secretary General of the Maritime Connectivity Platform Consortium. Thank you very much, and I think my presentation will go up very soon. There we go. All right, so I was given the title here, Common Platform for Maritime Informatics and the Role of the MCC, which obviously is not very far from my core business, so that's very fortunate. Next, please. So, obviously, what we are talking about is the digitalization of the maritime domain. And my first point here is that's what e-navigation used to be. When we started with e-navigation many years ago, this was the digitalization of the maritime domain. This was bringing contemporary digital technologies to use in the maritime domain. But then sometime along the road here, there was something introduced in the context of e-navigation. So we have now digitalization in the context of e-navigation, and then we have other digitalization. And maybe in my mimic, you could see that I'm not super thrilled about that. Next slide. So why am I not thrilled about that? Well, in e-navigation, we have been building a lot of what I call building blocks for digitalization. Guidelines, processes, standards, and those are building blocks needed for digitalization. And if other digitalization efforts develop other building blocks for the same purposes, then we do not have interoperability. We do not have what Jeppe was talking about, harmonized systems, and that is not where we want to go. So that is somewhat of a concern of mine. Next slide, please. So the building blocks, I can hardly see my own slide now because we're panning around in the, thank you. We have a number of building blocks. Most of them are quite familiar to you, but there are new ones coming along. One we have had for quite a long time is the initial description of maritime services, and there we have in the context of e-navigation. But that describes sort of the groups of digitalization, like digitalization in the area of MCS, of the maritime safety information, reporting, and different areas. We then have our guideline for how to make technical services, IALA guideline G1128, which is a way that we can describe technical services that can actually perform the digital exchange. We have our maritime resource names, or a unique way of identifying anything in the maritime domain. We have our S100, the Universal Hydrographic Data Model for a way we can do data modeling in the maritime domain. And we have a guideline from IMO. IMO is NSC 467101 that describe how the maritime services and the technical services and the maritime resource name and the data modeling all fits together. And more recently, we got another guideline, G1157 from IALA, which builds upon G1128 and describes how to make a technical service that uses internet technology, web services to exchange S100 data. That builds on the other technical service description. And we have coming up, not released yet, a standard that is called SECOM, which describes a way to securely exchange S100 data to ships. And again, this builds and is aligned with G1128 and G1157. There's a community working on making sure that all these standards and building blocks are aligned with each other. So my point is, let's use the same building blocks and not invent different building blocks for different areas of digitalization in the maritime domain, because we need basically the same type of building blocks for digitalization. Next slide, please. So at this point, it's usually where I go say, oh, but we missed something more, and I go about talking about the MCP, and I will, but we have actually a new building block, a new guideline, which is called Evaluation of Platforms for the Provision of Maritime Services, which has recently been adopted by IALA, which describes these missing elements, these missing links, these platforms that we also need in order to support digitalization. And the core features here are authentication. When you are moving around the world with the vessels and you need to exchange information with different stakeholders, how do you authenticate the parties that exchange information? Very, very core feature to have. And you need some platform to be able to support that feature. Also authorization, service management, and discoverability are some of the core elements described in this this guideline. And yes, thank you. And of course, the answer to that, from my perspective, is the Maritime Connectivity Platform, which supports these features or fills out these missing links. Next slide, please. So the document talks about platforms in plural. So several platforms, the more the better. Lots of different platforms doing different things. No. What we need again here is either harmonized interoperable platforms that works in the same way with the standardized APIs doing basically the same thing, or a single decentralized platform, which is actually more or less the same. That is what we need. Otherwise, we are defying the purpose of introducing platforms or a platform. Next slide, please. And this is where the role of the MCC comes in, because regardless of what whether you need a number of platforms that need to be harmonized, or you need a single decentralized platform, somebody needs to facilitate creating the standards and procedures around these platforms and making sure that they are in place. So you have interoperability between the platforms or between the entities in a decentralized system. And that is the role of the Maritime Connectivity Platform Consortium and what we're doing with the MCP. Next slide, please. So, most of you probably know about the MCP. I will not dive into the details here. You, of course, have the Maritime Identity Registry as the core element there for identities and the mechanism for providing authentication, service registry for service discoverability, and maritime messaging service for secure and reliable information exchange. Next slide. And as I said, the MCP is not one system, or it is a system, but it is a decentralized system, which is very, very important. In the beginning, when the concept was born, it was a single system, but over the course of the development, it was understood that this needs to be a decentralized system. So many different actors can run MCPs or be MCP service providers. And basically, if you want to use MCP, there's one question you need to ask: do I want to use somebody else's MCP, or do I want to set up my own MCP? So both are possible. Next slide. And we have the governing body, the Maritime Connectivity Platform Consortium, which is set up after the model of the World Wide Web Consortium, which is governing many of the standards that we know from the internet, and using the same structure and the decision model from the World Wide Web Consortium. Next slide. So where are we with the MCP now? When I talk about this in this form last year, we had a big milestone where we said we actually have operational instances at this time, but there was a little abadabai with these MCP instances. That was that we actually hadn't totally finalized the definition of each of the components of MCP at that time. And we still haven't done that for all the components, but we've done that for the identity registry at this point. So now we know exactly what it means to be an MCP identity service provider. So the next step for us now will be to formally endorse the MCP instance providers that exist and make an assessment according to the procedures that we have established in order to assess an MCP service provider. So that will be the next step. And we're still working on exactly defining the service registry and the messaging service. We have still the instance run by Ministry of Ocean Fisheries in Korea. We have the Navalink instance that is set up by SARC, American Wärtsilä. FinTraffic is setting up an instance which is not too early. Hold it. One back, please. Thank you. We have FinTraffic that has been decided to make one, which is not operational yet, and we have other organizations in the process of setting up MCPs, Cytronics in Russia, TLA in UK, in Canada, China, and marine fields in Cyprus. So there's a good momentum going there. Next slide, please. And in the consortium, we have a number of members, a growing number, not tremendously fastly growing, but steadily growing number of members in the MCP consortium. And I actually wanted to say something earlier that the document on platforms that is actually going to be presented at an IALA webinar on the 30th of September. So anybody that wants to have an insight in this document, there will be a webinar on that date. I don't have the time yet, but I hope I let them make available that information. At least it's on the 30th of September. Right, so next slide, please. And as usual, more information can be found on our website. And actually, if you look at it now and think it's a little bit old school and doesn't look that great, then in a week's time or so, we will be launching new websites which will look much more contemporary and much more and much better. All right. So those were the words from me. I wanted to say a little bit about a design award I was recently given about for PowerPoint presentations, but I think I'll skip that due to the time. So I will move on to the next presenter. And my next presenter here is Michael Bergman. And Michael has many hats, one of them being the CEO of Bergman Marine. And he will be talking about digital root exchange testbed and single window. So the cyberspace is yours, Michael.
Mr. Michael Bergman, if you can hear us, please proceed with your presentation.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me to speak at the about digital route exchange testbed and single windows in Digital at Sea Asia Pacific. I think we already had interesting discussions about different aspects we were looking into. And I want to focus a little bit more on the technical aspects of the data exchange, and what we do with all of that and how that can actually facilitate what we already heard from other speakers, like in our session from Jeppe and from Thomas. So please go to the next slide. When I take a look to our current development on digitalization, and Jeppe was very well positioning us there where we are, we see quite a few different initiatives and a growing number of data streams which are coming both to the ships as well as to the shore. You just talked briefly about one of the major ones which we are seeing. Currently in development is S421, voyage information. That goes back to the discussion we had in session 1. What do we need for supporting STM? What do we need for supporting port call optimization? The voyage information services from IEC will be an international standard which actually exchange information about the voyage, where the ship is and where the ship intends to go, with timestamps for the voyage. What we also have growingly available are historic traffic data. AIS data is now available as at a larger amount of information about how the traffic is behaving on a historical basis, and can be used for artificial intelligence to predict future developments of traffic. We have more and more port sensor data available, information about pollution in the port, about weather temperature, oceanographic information, tidal information, and other information in the port and in the entrance of the port. A lot of ports are starting to implement, already have implemented port community systems and receiving data and collecting data, storing and disseminating in the port those data in the port community systems. We have S101 coming up, which will be the replacement of S57 ENCs in the GI registry of IHO. We have growing amount of satellite data available as sat overlays on systems all over the place. So please stay on the prior slide. We have risk analysis data available. But at the same time, when we take about all of those information, be it AIS real-time data, S111 current data, or S124 navigational data, or what we already talked about, port call message formats, in S211. We are actually open for cyber threats. And we also receive information about cyber threats. May I please ask you to go to the prior slide, slide 2 of my presentation, because I'm focusing on that right now. I will tell you when go to slide 3. Thank you. So, as we are exchanging more and more information, there is a threat that will be captured and we get wrong information. I will get to that in a few minutes. But we also receive information about cyber threats. So where do cyber threats occur? What issues are coming up, which we also can use for our analysis? We do. Now, IMO has trying to work on harmonizing those data exchanges. We already talked about these, and Chepe was putting that quite well. Harmonization and collaboration is an important aspect as we are moving forward, and it will only work if we are harmonizing and if we are cooperating. IMO has built the e-navigation concept and elaborated on that with the help of other organizations in building an international information flow which helps connecting the ships and the ports and the ships, and the shore, so ports and ports. This information flow between ships and shore, shore and shore, ship and ship, and ship and shore is essential for us moving forward. And the IMO is, with different initiatives, is helping us moving forward, same with other organizations in the standardization. So move to the next slide, please. When we go to the digital route exchange, we are talking mainly about two different aspects of what is needed in order to know where a ship is, where a ship wants to go, how the port call will be conducted, and when the ship will leave for the next port call. We have S41, which I alluded to a few minutes ago, which IEC is working on for the voyage information, which is more or less looking at the voyage from a port to a port with waypoints, with timestamps, and so on and so forth. We have S211, the IALA standard, which is actually governed by the International Port CDM Council, which is exchanging timestamps about the port and is enabling the port to receive the information which we have heard of from ULCIBE, for example, in the STM project, is what is happening on the port. And it's also connecting the port to the hinterland, which is essential for running smooth operations. What is interesting and what is important is that IMO, in the definition of maritime service for port support services, has identified in IMO MSC1 Circular 1610 that S211 and S421 are part of the data exchange in support of port support services. Those two standards and other standards, like the currently expected to start development in ISO on port messages, and of course the development in IMO on the IMO compendium, helps to globally exchange information and helps the collaboration, which is essential, as Chepe was already mentioning. We go to the next slide, please. We take a look what is going on right now. Digitalization is a must. So when we take a look to the picture on the bottom left, that is actually a picture of a bridge of a cruise ship in the 60s. There was not much data exchange because digitalization was not possible and not done. But when we take a look to the other pictures of vessel traffic services or of the bridges, they are all depending on additional data to be shared and to be made available. And that is essential. From that point of view, I can only underline the importance of digitalization. And in that respect, especially of the route exchange and the port call message format for the organizations to know how the ship can be best organized in the way to the port, through the port call, and in departing for the next port. So next slide, please. We already saw that from Thomas on the Maritime Connectivity Platform. What I want to highlight in that picture is that in order to execute on digitalization, we need to be sure that the data we receive in our systems is actually authenticated. It is actually the data which we want to use, because if somebody from the outside is either faking data or is manipulating data, we will get wrong results and we will have very much difficulties. That is the cyber threat, which is apparent in the way of digitalization and in our use of data coming from the outside for our decisions. And the MCP is addressing exactly that. You have the identity register where you actually register yourself and saying you are exactly the person you are telling you are, and with whom you connect is actually the organization, service provider, with whom you want to connect, and not with somebody else who want to fake you. And you are in a position to actually identify and access those services which you need to. Either that these are retrieval informations when you get weather information as others, or you are sending informations out, for example, at ship reporting. Next slide, please. Ulf Sive has already talked about the STM validation project. And the concept of data exchange, safe data exchange, route exchange, and the utilization of those route exchange has been validated through the STM validation project and in other projects like the STEAM project in Cyprus and others. Next slide. Now, one thing what has been apparent, and I'm happy that Korea actually is focusing on that, is that most all of the current e-navigation testbeds have been regional or national testbeds. What we try to accomplish, or Korea tries to accomplish, and big thanks to Sun Dae-hong for actually initiating that, is to look for a global maritime digital route testbed where you actually utilize e-navigational aspects, e-navigation exchange throughout a voyage from Korea to Europe. So that would be the first time that we actually validate internationally on global, on a global scheme that e-navigation works from berth to berth, from continent to continent, from in big distances, passing interesting and challenging environments as we are moving through the voyage of a ship. So you should stay tuned. What is coming up in these developments, in these test beds, expected to start in 2023. So with that, I thank for your attention, and I hope you find it interesting, and I'm glad that I could present you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very good presentation. And we move on for some questions to the speakers. And
okay.
do I start with that? Yes, I think I do. So there will be a first question that is for Jeppe. And the question is, through digitalization in the maritime sector, the maritime industry is experiencing unprecedented rapid environmental changes. As a result, many changes are expected in the future. I think it is also very important to respond quickly to these changes. Among them will be the use of maritime digital information. However, the reality is that some countries are not responding smoothly to these changes. What elements or policies do the world need to grow together? Oh, yeah, solve the world's problem here, please.
Well, thank you. That was a very, very good question, and some of it I will not be able to answer in this session because it's a very political one, of course. But I think, in general, I would say that we are in a transition phase where we will, a few handles will be able to solve more problems than the two handles each represent. In this regard, the digitalization will solve the efficiency of the supply chain, and we will do this smoother, better. And by a positive side effect, we will see a very good gain on the greenhouse gases and the environmental issue. I'm not so sure whether we will actually see a benefit in the safety as such. But every new solution will, of course, provide a step towards a better safety. So there's a large number of I don't like the word problems, but there's a lot of obstacles with the shipping industry, which we can start solving, for instance, by use of digitalization. The most important thing is that we can communicate, that we can share information, and by that we can develop solutions which can make life much easier and much better, much stringent throughout the whole maritime industry.
Right.
And
Thank you very much.
if I may add to that, Thomas, I think I fully support what Jeppe was saying. And what is essential is that we are focusing in certain areas on the specific topics, but we are also interoperable, that we can connect those different initiatives for the bigger picture. And that is exactly what I hear Jeppe saying with the cooperation which we need to have. Because if we try to solve the issue on the highest level, it will not help us. We need to solve individual issues, and we need to be sure that those individual issue solutions can interact with each other to help the overall picture and the bigger picture.
Right. Thank you, Michael. So I have another question, which is for me. It states, I think MCP is an essential platform for sharing maritime information, so everyone be agreed to the importance of this. However, there will be some challenges such as normalization by expanding users and membership. I expect that the MCP will serve as a hub for data flow, such as sharing and providing information in maritime fields. What plans do you have for solving these challenges? Yes, I think the initiative is going in the right direction, but it is moving slowly. And I think one of the things that can really push things forward is what Michael have just talked about, because I've been participating in many test beds that were very much research oriented. We'll say, okay, what fancy things can we do to optimize or make the navigation more smoother. And something was experimented with. What we really want to try now is to have some mature candidate solutions, including the platform, including technical services, not technical services that we have just are trying out to see, can do this, could this be a benefit, but mature technical services for a new generation, for instance, for S101 maps, for maritime safety information in new formats, something that is close to being adopted in international organizations, but just needing the last mile of testing, and also testing across regions as the test that we have been describing. I think that's going to be a very, very big motivator and something that will push the whole process ahead. I'm really looking forward to that project and that initiative that I think will be very, very important. So I have one more question for Michael, a very short one, which is ship routes are changing throughout the voyage for various reasons. Doesn't this raise concerns about route exchange?
Thank you very much. Yes, it is the nature of shipping that during the work and of a ship and during the voyage of a ship, the voyage is changing based on environmental issues, waves, weather, or even operational issues like other assignments. But that is exactly a reason for the route exchange. Because the route exchange is not intended to be one exchange when you're planning your route and then when you're finishing your route, but throughout your voyage, you are exchanging information and you let the stakeholders which are connecting with you, which are working with you, understand better where you are, where you go, and when they can expect you to serve you in time. So route exchange is actually helping the situation that ship routes are constantly changing based on conditions the navigator or the shipping line have to take in consideration.
Right. Well understood. Thank you very much, Bergman. And then I don't know if there's a final question from the conference site or Zumbe.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Okay, I also have a question to Jeff from BIMCO. I think regardless the importance of harmonization and interoperability in sustainable maritime digitalization, especially regarding to the exchange information among actors as well as across the regions, there is no harmonization between the various maritime windows on a global scale, as Jeff commented in his presentations. So I believe one of the answers to this question would be already made by Mr. Michael Bergman through his presentation on digital route exchange testbed and single window. Anyway, we can continue to discussion on this matter in more deep way tomorrow together with Michael Lind from the RISE Victoria on his presentation about the maritime informatics as well as the digital clusters that is going to be presented by myself. Anyway, my question is that to Jeff, do you have any idea on the globally smarter collaboration to ensure easier digitalization and integration?
Thank you, Sonbei. I think it's a very wise question you just raised. I'm not so sure that I have the $100 answer to that question, but I often have a kind of picture that digitalization and the operability between platforms and systems are exactly the same problem we are facing as when we are traveling to a new country and trying to have our power plug put into the power socket. Very often we see that the power plug doesn't fit to the power socket. And for that reason, we need to have the converters. And if we don't have converters, we need to have common language so every power plug can fit into the power socket. And when that is solved, and that should be solved by the international robust associations like IMO, IHO, UNECE, many other robust associations which we can rely on when maintenance will have to be done on a later stage. Then I think we actually can achieve a sustainable level of interoperability within the digitalization. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeppe.
Yeah, thank you. So we have no more audience with questions here. You can conclude your session, Thomas.
Okay, thank you very much, Sunbei. Yeah, thank you very much to the speakers, and I guess this is it for this session. So back to you, Sunbei.
Okay.
Well, thank you once again for all of the speakers, as well as our chair for the moderation. This concludes session 1 and session 2 for today. I believe that there were various different discussions that were done. So what was your overall review of the first day?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Among the presentation, I most like the presentation made by Jeff regarding the data exchange. I believe his efforts could be very useful to the IAM's work to create some kind of data list up at the level of a FAR community these days. Anyway, we had discussed on how to achieve goal harmonization between the newly emerging maritime digital technologies, along with some kind of discussion on the roles of digitalization in terms of the carbon reduction. So as well as the maritime platform for global digital services. Anyway, based on today's discussion, I'm very looking forward to further discuss on the global cluster or maritime informatics as we commented today by the very many speakers. So jointly conduct a real test bed across the region is very important. So I wish all of the speakers who made a presentation today to participate in the tomorrow's discussion continuously. Thank you so much.
Yes, once again, we do ask all of our speakers today to participate in session 3, 4, and 5, which is planned for tomorrow. And as I mentioned, we will be starting at the same time as today, 4 p.m. Korea Standard Time. That is 9 a.m. Central Eastern Time. And as I mentioned, we do have 3 different sessions tomorrow, which will also be very interesting. The first topic will be core technology and standardization. Second will be harmonization in the maritime technology, digital transformation. And the third session for tomorrow will be digital at sea conferences. We do urge everyone to please come tomorrow once again and join us in our discussion. It will be a total of 2 hours and 55 minutes for tomorrow as well. Well, with that, thank you once again for everyone participating. Thank you, Mr. Hong, for being the co-MC for today.
Thank you so much. I guarantee that we are going to proceed a conference more smoothly tomorrow, right?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Yeah.
So thank you once again for bearing with us and excuse us for the delay. We will see you back tomorrow. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. See you then tomorrow.